Hello, BookTube. I'm back up in my book room here with my science fiction books behind me. And I'm here to do a video for Rocket Summer. It is an event in July, which we're in already, so I'm a bit late at getting to this. It's created by Michael K. Vaughan, and it's to celebrate classic science fiction. Now, there are a host of co-hosts, that are available. I'll list everybody down below. This is a video, as I say, I'm a bit late getting to it, but it's a video of classic science fiction anthologies. Now, Michael K. Vaughan wanted it to be classic science fiction, so it's anything pre 1970. Now, he split it up into 4 weeks because there's 4 weeks in July. The first week is everything up till the end of 1939. Science fiction, so right from the beginnings of science fiction, proto-science fiction, whatever you want, up to the end of 1939. Second week is 1940s up to the end of 1949. And then the third week is 1950s to the end of 1959. And the fourth week, as you can probably guess, is 1960s up to the end of 1969. Now, he chose 1969 as the cutoff date because during the 60s and mid-60s, the new wave started gaining traction, and it really changed science fiction in many ways. So instead of cutting it off in halfway through the decade, he went up to 1970, where everything was in full swing at that time. Pardon the pun. So I'm going to go through a stack of anthologies here that cover that period. Now, it's going to be a long video, or I'll break it down in two. Now, the first one that I want to show is Science Fiction by Gaslight. It's a history and anthology of science fiction in popular magazines 1891 to 1911, edited by Sam Moskowitz. This was published by World Publishing Company, and that was done in 1968. And it covers, as it says, the popular magazines from 1891 to 1911. Now, it's got a lot of things in here, some that are known, like Grant Allen, The Thames Valley Catastrophe, from the Strand magazine, 1897, and from other publications like The Idler, Pearson's magazine, Everybody's magazine, The Argosy, the Metropolitan magazine, the New Broadway magazine, the Red Book, the Blue Book, and so on and so forth. And it's split up into a section: catastrophes, marvelous inventions, monsters and horrors, future war, man-eating plants, far-out humor, scientific crime and detection, medical miracles, adventures in psychology. Now, this you can look this up if you want to for more detail of this, but this is the kind of stuff that can work for especially the first week, which we're almost finished with for Rocket Summer. Another one edited by Sam Moskowitz. It's the Masterpieces of Science Fiction. Now, this is a companion book to his Seekers of Tomorrow, I think it is. Now, which is a collection of sort of biographical and bit of critical material for science fiction writers, early science fiction writers. And this one was published by the World Publishing Company again in 1966. And it goes all the way back. It's got stuff like Voyage to the Moon by Cyrano de Bergerac, Mary Wollstonecraft, Shelley, the Mortal Immortal. I believe that's an excerpt, I think, from The Last Man. Hans Pfau, A Tale by Edgar Allan Poe. The Wondersmith by Fitzjames O'Brien. It's got Edward Everett Hale, E. Everett Hale, as normally shown, I believe. H.G. Wells, M.P. Shield, Conan Doyle, Carl Capek, Hugo Gernsback. Yes, even a story by Hugo Gernsback. So that's a good one. It's fair size. Now, another one along similar lines is A Spectrum of Worlds, edited with an introduction notes by Thomas D. Clarison. And this was published by Doubleday and Company in 1972. And it's got things like Ambrose Pierce in it, H.G. Wells, Jack London, Jack Williamson, Stephen Vincent Benet, even Isaac Asimov, A.E. Van Vogt, Clark, Clifford Simak, J.G. Ballard, Harry Harrison, Samuel R. Dennehy, Brian W. Aldiss, and Robert Silverberg. Now, that's most of the early stuff. I've got a few other things, but we'll skip on those at the moment. They're mostly early war, sort of, future war, but early war stories. And here's a great one for science fiction anthology, just of the 30s. It's before the Golden Age, and it's a collection edited and selected by Isaac Asimov. And it's really good because it's got autobiographical introductions to each story. Things that were going along in his life, what he thought of the story, what was happening with him. And this was published by Doubleday and Company in 1974. And it's got everything. Like really great stuff from the 30s. The Man Who Evolved by Edmund Hamilton. And it goes through, it's quite big. It's almost 1,000 pages long, so it's a very, very good anthology. May not be the best cover art, but hey-ho. Now, we move forward a little bit. Now, anthologies, I won't go into sort of a history of science fiction anthologies, but let's just say that the 1940s was really the start of it. And there were two that really, really kicked off the style of anthologies. And the first was The Best of Science Fiction, edited by Groff Conklin. This has preface by John W. Campbell Jr., who at the time was obviously editor of Astounding. Now, this was published in 1946 by Crown Publishers. Now, this was the first one to come out in 1946, and it just has a plethora of great science fiction. And as usual with Groff Conklin, he separates it into sort of themes. You got part one, the atom, then the wonders of Earth, super science of man, dangerous inventions, adventures in dimension, and from outer space. And it's got all the names in there. The very first story is by Anson MacDonald, and those in the know that was a pseudonym for Robert A. Heinlein. So, and most of this will be dealing with 30s, late 30s and 40s science fiction, but even some older stuff in here. A very great anthology. Now, the same year, in 1946, but later in the year, came out Adventures in Time and Space, 35 stories. Now, this is a later reprint by the Modern Library, and it was edited by Raymond J. Healy and J. Francis McComas. And J. Francis McComas was co-editor of at the beginning of the magazine of fantasy and science fiction that started in 1949. So this again is similar to the Groff Conklin collection. But it doesn't. It's not thematic. It's just there's 35 stories in here, and they are all basically, obviously, from the some from the 30s, late 30s, and 40s. It is a fabulous collection. As I say, it's still available. The Science Fiction Book Club, I believe, has had a Recent, and when I say recent, in the past 30 years, reprints of this. A lot of these have been reprinted, but even the first one, the best of, but under different names. That's a bit of a problem. But if you find, if you look it up, you'll be able to see where the collections are, and their reprints. Now, it's sort of not too difficult to go where next, but then following up this in the late 40s, Groff Conklin put out the Treasury of Science Fiction. This was his second collection, and this is by Crown Publishers as well. Because by that point, those two previous ones sold like hotcakes, and so publishers now realized that, you know, anthologies were a gold mine. So they started coming out like crazy. That opened the sluice gates for the anthologies. So this Crown Publishers again in 1948. Again, like Groff Conklin did, it's split up into into sections thematically. The atoms and after, the wonders of the earth, the super science of man, dangerous inventions, adventures in dimensions from outer space, and far traveling. So again, these are quite big, like the 500 plus pages for the anthologies. Now, before I go into sort of the 1950s, I want to show something which was, it's not an anthology per se, it's an omnibus, and it's the first science fiction omnibus, and it was published by it's the Viking Portable Library, Novels of Science. Yes, Novels of Science. And this came out in 1945 by the Viking Press, and it was selected with introductions by Donald A. Wollheim, and my copy here is signed. And there's a dedication by Donald Wollheim. Donald Wollheim, as everybody knows, is from Daw Books, Donald A. Wollheim, and also was the editor of Ace Publications. So this has 4 novels in, early science fiction novels. You got The First Men in the Moon by H.G. Wells, Before the Dawn by John Taine, The Shadow Out of Time by H.P. Lovecraft, calling it a novel, and Odd John by Olaf Stapleton. So that was the first anthology that had come out. He did probably the first, he did the first anthology I said anthology, omnibus. This was the first science fiction omnibus. But he did the first science fiction anthology that had science fiction on the cover. And that was the Pocket Book of Science Fiction a few years earlier, and I believe it was 1943. And it was the one that's remembered as the first anthology. Now, let's move on here. Let's see what else we got. Now, let's stick with Groff Conklin for the moment. And we've got another omnibus of science fiction edited by Groff Conklin. And this is a bit rough, my jacket on this. And it again, it's fairly large. It's thick paper. It's almost 600 pages. And it's called an omnibus of science fiction because it's got some novels in here as well as short stories. So that's why it's called an omnibus. And this was published by Crown Publishers in 1952. And it has a lot of stuff. Again, he puts it thematic. He was the sort of king of thematic anthologies. It was Groff Conklin. Now we got Wonders of Earth and Man, Inventions, Dangerous and Otherwise, From Outer Space, Far Traveling, Adventures in Dimensions, and Worlds of Tomorrow. So yes, it's a very good anthology slash omnibus. Let me just reach over to put that away. Now we continue in the 1950s with the first anthology from Astounding Science Fiction, edited by John W. Campbell. And this was published in 1952 as well, I believe. I'll give me a good date here that I can see. This says my editions, my copies of first edition. So yeah, 1952. Yes, 1952. So this is clearly selected from the pages of Astounding magazine. So this was the first one in 1952, and it was published by Simon and Schuster. Now, also in the 50s, we got 2 volumes here, A Treasury of Science Fiction. Really cool sort of artwork for the covers. Now, this was edited by Anthony Boucher. I mentioned J. Francis McComas as being the co-editor of the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, starting in late in 1949. His co-editor was Anthony Boucher, the editor of these 2 volumes. Now, this has 4 full-length novels, plus 12 novelettes and 8 short stories. So it's a collection, an omnibus / anthology. Now, it was published in 1959. Were both volumes published in 1959? Let's take a peek here. I can't remember now off the top of my head. Yes, they were both published in 1959. Now, these are still able to get pretty easily, mostly book club editions. I've never actually seen a non-book club edition for these. I would love to get one if it was possible, but this is a later book club edition. It has just a wonderful collection as well. Now, let's see, where do we go here? Oh, here's another one from the 50s. This is Adventures in Tomorrow, a galaxy of science fiction stories, edited by Kendall Foster Crossan. Not sort of well-known editor, but it's a Corwin book, Greenberg publisher, New York, 1951. Now, this has a collection of old material, mostly 50s. Yes, I believe it's mostly 50s. It's got Flying Dutchman by Ward Moore, who was the author of Bring the Jubilee, a alternate history. And There Will Come Soft Rains by Ray Bradbury. That's a story that is from the Martian Chronicles. That's 1950. And The Portable Phonograph by Walter Van Tilburg Clark. Yes, Walter Van Tilburg Clark, who was the author of the Oxbow incident. So that's in here. Let's see, where do we go now? Now, I'm going to switch to sort of British editions. Let's see here. Now, here we got Stories of Tomorrow by William Sloane. Really cool covers that wraps around on the spine. This is by Eyre and Spottiswoode. Selections and prefaces by William Sloane. An anthology of modern science fiction. But that was published in 1955, so it still fits for everything here. And it has a little bit of an introduction. And again, like Groff Conklin, he's borrowed the aspect of putting him in thematic sections. The Human Heart, which has Ray Bradbury, Anthony Boucher, Mary Wolfe, unknown author now, or forgotten, I should say. There are No Easy Answers. Mary Leinster is in that. And Sweat of the Brow. Difference with Distinction. And The Trouble with People is People. That's a section, yes. And Visitors. And 3 epilogues. And it has Arthur C. Clarke's The 9 Billion Names of God, which is a fabulous book. So this was published, as I say, in 1951. 1955. Sorry, 1955. Now, let's go on to some other. Now, these are all British editions of American publications, which means, in most part, that they're stripped down versions. They don't have as many stories as the original one. This is a fabulous 1950s collection that was edited by Judith Merrill, called Beyond Human Ken, and this is the British edition. As I say, they have wonderful wraparound, well, not full wraparound, but onto the spine dust jackets. Now, this was published in Britain in 1953. I think it was like 52, possibly, or 51. That was the American one, and it was a bit unique because it's one of the first, if not the first. She did like a female editor, and she didn't just pull stories from the pure science fiction magazines. She went further than that, and she also did a series that were the year's best SF. And again, she pulled it from other magazines, slick magazines, and all sorts to get selections. Now, this is the British edition, Grayson and Grayson, and this was published, say, 1953. But as I say, it is a bit of a stripped down version of the American one. So there's that one. Now we'll continue on with those. Possible Worlds of Science Fiction, by another one by Groff Conklin, and there was an American version that has the full stories, but again, just wonderful covers. This was published in Britain in 1952 by Grayson and Grayson. The next few will be all Grayson and Grayson. So this again is into sections, but only two: the solar system and the galaxy. This is the best science fiction stories, edited by Everett F. Blyer and T.E. Dickty. Now this, I love this cover on this one. Now this was originally came out in 1949 with a bigger collection, but this was first published in the UK and Great Britain in 1951 by Grayson Grayson again. This has an introduction by Vincent Starrett, which is actually a really good introduction. Now, again, as I say, this is a bit of a cut-down version, and I will be getting the original version because they both put out, I think, about 5 or 6 starting in 1949, yearly best of, and then Dick T took over and did it for a couple of years, and also did the best novels as well. And Everett F. Blyer is a great anthology editor, but also compiler, bibliographer. He's got bibliographies that are fabulous, as well as not just in science fiction, in sort of supernatural fiction as well. So there's another one that's fabulous. Now, we saw the Adventures in Time and Space, the from 1946, this being later edition by the Modern Library. But here's the British version of it, Adventures in Time and Space. Again, rough cover, but wonderful wraparound. And again, it just has a selection of the stories. And let's see here. Grayson, 1952, published in the UK. Again, just to remind the editors, Raymond J. Healy and J. Francis McComas. And it's subtitled An Anthology of Modern Science Fiction Stories. And it has Robert A. Heinlein in here. This one, The Roads Must Roll. It also has Isaac Asimov, Nightfall. So it's a cut down version, but a really good collection. Now we got here The Robot and the Man, Adventures in Science Fiction, edited by Martin Greenberg. Now, this is not the Martin H. Greenberg who worked a lot with Isaac Asimov. It's not him. This is Martin Greenberg who did I just slipped my mind. The publisher in the 50s where City by Simak was published, Cosmic Engineers, Gnome Press. He did Gnome Press. And this was published by Gnome Press originally as well. And this is Grayson and Grayson, 1954. And it is a collection again. It's got John D. MacDonald, Bernard Wolfe, Louis Pageant, A.E. Van Vogt, Joseph E. Kellum, Robert Moore Williams, Lester Del Rey. Now, as I say, these I'm not going through everything because it would take way too long to do that. But this is another good. And again, I love the dust jacket. So those are the British ones. Now we go back to some American ones here. Now we got When Women Rule, edited again by Sam Moskowitz. And this was published by Walker and Company in 1972. And it has mostly, it's got some earlier stuff too. From 1916, George Allen England, June 6, 2016 is the title. The Veiled Feminists of Atlantis by Booth Tarkington. That is, yes, the American writer Booth Tarkington of, Main Street, I believe it is. The Last Man by Wallace G. West. That was published in 1929 by Amazing Stories. Yes, just all, and a story by, I think it is a story, or introduction by Sam Moskowitz. But it's again an interesting collection in itself. I haven't read all of them in here. Now we've got Editor's Choice in Science Fiction, compiled by Sam Moskowitz. Now, this is an interesting collection. This is the McBride Company in 1954. Now, he went to editors of magazines, such as The Blue Book, and asked for their best story. And John W. Campbell of Astounding, and so forth. Thrilling Wonder Stories, Super Science Fiction, Unknown, Astonishing Stories, Wonder Stories, Weird Tales, Science Fiction Plus. That was at this time, that was a magazine that he was editing. And from Famous Fantastic Mysteries, and from Fantastic Story magazine. So these are with little introductions by the editors of why they think it's the best story. Now, let's get through this. There's a few more to do here. Let's do this big one. This is a more modern collection, which is readily available. It's the Science Fiction Century, edited by David G. Hartwell. And this is a honkin' book by Tor. This was published in 1997, and it literally does exactly what it says. It's science fiction through the century, and it's about 1,000 pages. It's just short of 1,000 pages. So again, that's easy to find and to look up the contents of that. Now, it's a set of books that was done they were edited and collected by Mike Ashley. Now, in the early 70s, he did a history of science fiction magazines. Now, it was more an anthology than a history. He later adapted it to be a full history of magazines, and but he ditched the stories. But in its original incarnation, there was 4 volumes here, and the first volume is part 1, 26 to 35, and it has information, like little snippets and history of the magazines, and all the sort of bibliographical detail and not so much contents, but like who the editor was, the artists, and so forth. Now, that's the first volume, and this is published New English Library. Let's see here. 1974. Now, this is mostly an anthology, and it's stories that he thought were representative of the period. As I say, that is missing from his rewrite and expanded, detailed history of magazines. Now, Volume 2 is 1936 to 1945, again edited by Mike Ashley. Again, I like the way the British ones. This is actually goes all the way, like it's, the back doesn't have the words on it. This is New English Library again, published 1975. And again, it's just a collection of stories that he thought were representative. 1946 to 1955, the history of science fiction magazines. Again, same process with wraparound picture. And this is New English Library again, published 1976. And we finish up with part 4, 1956 to 1965. So that's a very good ending point, actually, because that's where the new wave was started to come in. So again, a wraparound cover, and this is New English Library, 1978. So there you go. There is a shit ton, that's a technical term, of science fiction for Rocket Summer. Now, I'll be back. I will do another thing. I'll do a few of these type of videos for Rocket Summer. And I'll be, next I'll be doing encyclopedias. So some non-fiction science fiction. Thank you, BookTube.